Hello, and welcome to Conquering Finale. My name is Jason Lafredo, and this is a subscriber request. Today's request comes from Jorge Hoyos Rentería. Jorge was interested in a video about string divisi, particularly when multiple staffs are involved. This is a great question, and it just so happens to be incredibly timely because it involves a lot of work with a staff tool, which was the most recent tool that I covered. In fact, in order to achieve string divisi on multiple staffs in Finale, we need to apply and combine most of the lessons that I taught in staff tool strategies. So, what a great way to put a tidy bow on that whole series. Now, Elaine Gould's Behind Bars has some great examples of what multiple staff string divisi should look like. So for this video, I decided to actually recreate some of those samples in Finale. These demonstrations should reveal the processes and techniques that you can use for your own string divisi writing. Before I get into that, I just want to show you how you can submit a request for a video. First of all, you must be a subscriber, so click the subscribe button on YouTube and/or sign up for the mailing list by clicking this link on the website. Then, just send me an email here with your request. Lastly, if your request does make it to video, please consider a donation to the cause with whatever you can. It would be most appreciated. More details can be found following the link in the description below or directly on the subscriber request page of the website. Now, let's get started divisifying our strings. So I'm going to try and kind of fly through this because there's a lot I want to cover, but all of this stuff is kind of covered in the Staff Tool Strategies series, and if I get to something, I may put a little note down here to tell you which video I'm actually working from, but I'm going to assume a little bit that you kind of either watch those videos or you have a really good working knowledge of the Staff Tool specifically. So just bear with me. I'm just going to do things and just hang on. Now, if you don't have Elaine Gould's Behind Bars, which heretofore I'm going to refer to as the Gould, I highly recommend that you get it. It is one of the greatest resources for engravers that you could ever have. It's incredibly thorough and just a really great tool. So I encourage you to get that. But for those of you that don't, I will throw up the examples here so you can see what I'm doing as I'm going. The first of which, if you look at page 535, which is the divided string section layout, I'm going to skip over this because I covered this sort of in two different videos. 20-5A will show you exactly how to get these groups, the brackets exactly the way that they're supposed to. And then 20-6C is a exhaustive video about how to do the different naming conventions. And I pretty much covered all of these in various forms in that video, except I did it with choirs, not necessarily string sections. So even though I'm doing it with choirs, all the principles will work exactly the same. So 20-5A and 20-6C is really all you need to do to set up page 535. But if we turn the page to 536, this is where we're going to start dealing with divisis. Now that first sample there, this is fairly simple, and there really is no multiple staff divisi situation here. This is just expressions. So, I'll just show you what I did here. I've created a string category, which is just a duplicate of the technique text. This is literally just so that I can keep these divisis and glialtries and everything kind of organized in one place. They're easy to find, but I didn't create the first one for you, so I'll do that here. Div 3. Easy enough. You create it, you add it, and of course you'll have to move it sometimes because these technique texts will go exactly where you click your mouse. And Divisi 4, I've got that one here. I think it's that one. Next one I need is 4 soli. There we go. Easy enough. And glialtri divisi, I believe, is this one. So this is relatively simple. I'm just using expressions. And of course, if you're using a lot of these, it's a good idea to use meta tools. I programmed V to be my divisi there, so that's easy enough. And then one other thing in this sample that a lot of people don't necessarily know how to do right off the bat is that little bracket on this E and B here. So I'll just show you how to do that real quick. The best way, honestly, is to go into File, and we're going to load a library. And we're going to find the engraver font. We're going to find the articulations. Now this will add all of the engraver font articulations, which includes many duplicates of the Maestro font articulations, starting with the staccato right here. So you're not going to need a lot of these. So what I do when I generally import these libraries is just kind of select that first one I don't need and find the last one that I don't need, which I think is this one, and just press delete. That gets rid of all the duplicates. And what we're left with is these special articulations from the engraver font set that are really useful. And you can see that I've got these brackets here, both right and left facing. I've also got these rolls with arrows, which is really handy for piano music, and also arrows with straight lines. So the one that I want here, I think, is this third one. And if we select that, there we go. And we can always move it in place if we need to, if we don't like the exact positioning. And that's how you do that. So that's the engraver articulation set. All right, so that's really all there is to this particular sample. It's on one staff. You're just using expressions. I just showed you how to get that little bracket, and we're good to go. The second sample on that page, page 536, is where it gets a little hairier. So I'm just going to scroll over here, and I've got the top half of that already entered in my score in the Violin 1 staff, but I need to get that second line in there. So how are we going to do this? This is where the magic happens for these multiple staff Divisis. In Finale, there's no way to magically just make another staff appear temporarily and make it go away. We really do have to have the staff in the file in the score manager. So that's where we're going to go first. We're going to go into the score manager, and I'm literally going to add another violin section instrument underneath Violin 1. So go to Add Instruments, Strings, Violin Section, and wait for it to load. And there we go. And now when you do that, you're going to get a Violin 1, a Violin 2, and a Violin 3, which is not what we want. We want a Violin 1, sort of a blank staff, and then a Violin 2. So first thing we need to do is actually just uncheck Auto Number Style for that new violin section instrument, and that will leave this one as Violin 1, and we'll leave this one as Violin 2, which is what we want here. All right. And then we go back into the score, and now what we're seeing is a Violin 1 label here and a violin label with nothing here. But actually, what I'm going to do is I don't want to show either of these labels, all right? I'm going to get rid of them. So let's go into the staff attributes and uncheck staff name in score for Violin 1 and unnamed staff name in score for violin. There we go. Now we have no staff names for these two staffs. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a new group here. All right, so what I'm going to do is select to the left of the original violin staff and then the new violin staff, so that I'm selecting both staffs for the entire score. Staff tool, staff menu, groups and brackets, add. And what we're going to do is, starting with the bottom, I'm going to add a subgroup using this square bracket. Now, when you use a subgroup, you kind of have to triple the value here, distance from left edge of staff. So it's negative 0.04. I believe if I do negative 0.125, that should be just about right. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a group name. So I'm going to call this Violin Roman numeral 1. And for the abbreviated, VLN period I. There we go. And what this does nicely is it will give you a sub bracket and a name, Violin 1. And on the abbreviated ones, we'll say Violin 1. Now, what I don't like about the way the Finale does these names out of the box is that the group names tend to be further off to the left than the staff names, so you can kind of see that my Violin 1 and my Violin 2 are not aligned. So if you're going to be doing something like this, my recommendation is actually change the values of the default positions for these names so that they're all even. And of course, when you do that, going into the staff tool, set default name positions. And you actually have to do it for all four of these. So I'll do it for the first one here for full staff name. Instead of -0.15, negative 0.18 works pretty well. And I'm just going to go through and do all of these. I may fast forward this a little bit. All right, so I've set them all to negative 0.18, and you can see that they now sort of align together, so it doesn't appear that this name is any different than the Violin 2 here. And same thing with the abbreviated names, all right? So now that I've got this Violin 1 section that has two staffs, I don't want to show this second staff most of the time, right? So the best way to deal with this is to select the entire staff and in the staff tool, actually go and use the hide empty staffs function. We don't want to force hide the staffs because then we'd never be able to show this staff. So what I want to do is hide empty staffs, and that will hide each empty staff on a system by system basis, right? And what you'll see now is that the sub bracket goes away. The violin 1 label gets centered on the group, which is now a single staff. So it's centered on the staff. So this is why this will look perfectly normal, other than the fact that this is blue and this is black. But of course, it will always print black. So it doesn't appear that anything has changed. The only thing that really has changed here is that we do have this alternate staff that's ready for us to use whenever we want. However, as you can see, it doesn't exist in page view. I find the best way to do, I mean, you could go here and show the staff just for this particular system, but I actually find sort of a better way to do this is to go into scroll view, because in scroll view, you will always see all of those hidden staffs. And from scroll view, now we can enter those new notes. And when we do, they will magically appear in page view, because Finale does not want you to lose data. So it will always re-show staffs when you enter notes. So give me a second here. I will definitely fast forward through this so you don't have to watch me enter all these notes, but give me a second and I'll put these in. All right, so now you can see I've added these notes, and actually we can add that Divisi marking there as well. We'll attach it to the extra staff there. Why not? And as I said, you enter these notes in scroll view, and when you go into page view, they will magically appear because Finale does not want to hide data from you ever when you do these hide empty staffs like that. So it will reappear just for that system, and then it will disappear again for the next system. And of course, over here, we probably want the unison marking just to indicate that we're going back to unison there. So that's how you do that. And you can see how nicely this is set up. When you only have one staff, the violin 1 marking is here with no extra subgroup brackets. It's appropriately labeled. And then when you add the extra one, you'll get the violin 1 that goes in between, and you'll get the sub bracket to indicate that these both are part of the violin 1 section. So that's the easy way to do that. Now, the other thing you may notice about this is that whenever you add staffs, you're always going to have this issue where you're you're cramping your space here. My advice is always, if you're going to be doing these types of divises, always make sure that your scores are kind of spread out enough to give yourself a little bit of breathing room, and you'll always be running into situations like this. So for here, what I'm going to have to do is take these this entire selection on this page. We can go to, where is it, respace staves, and I'm going to do something like 96%. And that should, reduce everything to a point where, the bottoms are sort of lining up a lot better. So that's always going to be a constant thing you're going to have to adjust when you're adding these extra staffs like that. So let's look at that next sample on page 537, because this gets a little bit even more complicated, starting with bar 20 here as I have it. And it starts the same way. So let's go ahead and go into scroll view and actually add these notes. So once again, give me a second here, and I will go ahead and add these notes. All right, easy enough. And actually, we can add that little arrow too. If you're not familiar with how to do this, go into the Smart Shape tool and choose the Custom Line tool. Option click to get to the Smart Line selection, and actually choose the third option here, which is the bend line with the arrow. When you use it as a custom line, it will end up going straight, not in a curved line. So select that and just double click, and you can add that line. And I'll put it in place better in page view when I do that. So there you go. So now we're going to go back into page view. And you can kind of see that we're almost there. The only thing that we have to deal with is the cutaway part of this. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky, particularly in the way that Gould has this set up, where she's got the clef and the key signature being restated right before that E there in the alternate violin part. The clef is kind of easy to do. The key signature is really tricky because unless you're splitting measures, which causes problems with measure numbers and multi-measure rest, it's not an ideal way to do this. So the better way to do this is actually to add that key signature as an expression, believe it or not. So let me just walk you through that. We'll go into the expression tool. I can create it from my strings category. That's totally fine. what we want to do is make sure that we're choosing the music font and type the hashtag, or as those of us born in the 20th century know it, the pound sign, and click OK. And now we've got our sharp. And then the trick is just to kind of get it in place. And I always hold down Option so that we can get that anchor point attached to the E here, so it will never move as the spacing moves. And then we'll add the second one for the F sharp, something like that. And that's how you'd get that key signature in there with an expression. It is a little bit of a pain in the neck to do this, especially if you have a key signature with 5 or 6 sharps. That would be really annoying. But that's how you kind of have to do that. The clef, as I mentioned, is a little bit easier. What I can do is just kind of select the second part of, just this third beat really, double click, and choose the clef, and then where it says show clef, just choose always, and then make sure the clef size is 100. And when you do that, the clef will just magically appear there. Of course, it's all kinds of over top of everything, so just grab the handle and kind of move it off to the left. So now we've got that that clef and key signature set up the way we need to. The next piece of this is doing the cutaway score, and if you remember from the staff styles or the staff hiding videos, I'll have to look to see which one that was, we can just simply kind of select what we need up into that treble clef there, and then choose the 4-side staff and cutaway. And there you go. And we can do that here as well, 4-side staff and cutaway. All right, let's go ahead and fix that arrow to kind of make it look like it does in the Gould. Something like that. And we're almost there. Now there's a slight difference between what you see on my screen here and what Gould has done, where the bar lines don't get drawn through here, right? We can fix that too just by editing this particular staff style. If we choose the option to break bar lines between staffs, and when you do that, you should always choose the next one to break repeat bar lines as well, and click OK. And you'll see that the bar lines actually will go away there. So that's pretty much exactly how you do that. Let's actually do this one last thing here. There's a Divisi marking here. Let's put that guy in there. And you might notice that little bracket there. Let's try and add that bracket. Now this is going to be another expression. Let's do this. Yeah, we'll do it in the strings here. And we're going to use a shape, create. There's a little bracket thing here, and all you got to do is click to add it. And I always recommend respacing it in the score so you can know exactly what you're doing. We've got this bracket. I'm just going to assign it. It's going to be way too big, but let's put it in place first. And then when you have these shapes in the score, just double click the handle and you'll get more handles, which will allow you to stretch it and do whatever you need to get it to the right size. And when you click away, you'll get the original handle and just move it into place. So that's how you would do that. Right? So far, so good. Except for one little bugaboo here at the end of this system here. We have these extraneous key signature and time signature courtesies here, which is kind of annoying. Now, this will never occur if that key change happens to be on the next system. You can see that if I just throw that measure 27 into the next system, it's not a big deal. But if for whatever reason this is the case, then this is where it gets a little hairy. What we need to do here, bear with me, is we're going to find this in scroll view. This is the next measure on that alternate violin staff. And I'm going to do something crazy here. I'm going to create a new staff style. New, we're going to call it 22 independent key time. We're going to make sure that key signature and time signature is checked. And okay, and we're going to apply it here. And I'm just going to apply it just to the current part or score. Independent key time. And then what I'm going to do is actually change the time signature and key signature of just this measure to match the time and key signature of the previous measure. This way the courtesies won't appear. So what am I in the key signature tool here? So D major, and in the time signature tool, 3/4. All right, so I've literally just delayed the key and time signature. It doesn't matter, particularly if this, these staffs are presumably going to be empty, and this is going to be hidden in the score anyway. So you're never going to see this mess of a situation in page view. And in fact, if we go over to page view, you'll see that that's exactly what happens. So now it's really strange, but that's really the only way to get rid of it in this very, very, very specific circumstances where the key and time changes at the end of the line. Now, let's take a look at the last sample here on page 537, which is a little bit different because there's a solo violin 1 above the violin 1 staff. Well, most of the principle is the same, and actually we do need to add another violin here, except we need to add it on top of the violin section here. So what I'm going to do is choose the piano here and add an instrument, strings. Now we're going to add the violin, not the violin section, just in case you want a different sound. That's exactly what will happen. And now we have this extra violin this violin here. Of course, it will show up in the score everywhere, which is, again, you're going to have to deal with this. And unfortunately, what it does when you do something like this, it really messes up the groups. You can see that my subgroup here is all kinds of screwy. So we're going to have to kind of edit the groups. And I find the best way to do this is in scroll view here. So just bear with me. Now what I can do is just double click this subgroup just to change the scope of it, so we can change it from the violin 1 to that top violin 1 staff. So that's the subgroup for all the violins, right? Now again, we don't want to show the violin marking here, so we'll just go in here, hide staff name and score. And you'll notice that my subgroup went away, which kind of stinks. So again, we'll make a subgroup out of all 3 staffs. Add, again, same thing, bracket. We're going to make this -125. Again, call this violin 1. And call the abbreviated VLNI. All right, so now we've got that subgroup set up to be centered on all 3 staves, right? And we're going to do the same thing in scroll view that we did as far as the extra violin staff when we went and hit it. So again, just staff tool, select the whole line and choose hide empty staves. And once again, now we have the situation where when there's only 1 staff, we only see the group name centered on the staff. We don't see the sub bracket. All right, so now here we have the 2 staff situation. This is all looking appropriate again. This is all correct still. And now we get to this next section here where we have this. And the same principle applies. I'm going to go into scroll view and add notes above here where I need them. So hang with me here and I will do this. All right, easy enough. And let's go back to page view to see how this looks. And of course, when you add those notes, it now adds the extra staff back because, again, Finale doesn't ever want to hide staffs from you that have data in it. So now that violin 1 solo line will reappear. And sort of the same thing with the clef. This is easy to do. And when we add it at the beginning, we definitely want to select it here. Clef, always 100%. And it will always put it before the bar line. And then we'll do the same thing with the cutaway score. So just grab as much of that as you can and choose, where is it? 4 side staffs cutaway. And then over here, it's actually this bar to the end that it cuts away. So there we go. And we're good to go. And of course, the violin 1 label will get put in the right place. It won't get put centered between these. All right, so that's pretty much, it's very similar. You're just adding the staff above instead of below. Now, of course, with this sample and the other sample, I didn't really do my spacing, so you can see that my measure numbers are getting a little too low here. So what we could do, just take both of these systems, spacing. Let's go 96%, and it's pretty close. This probably has to come down a lot. There we go. Again, whenever you do this, you're going to be dealing with these spacing issues. So, but that's exactly how that gets done. Now, the last piece of this that we're going to have to deal with is the linked parts. Now, this is where it gets slightly hairy. We're going to go into the edit parts menu here, and you're going to notice 2 new violin parts at the bottom because every time you add a staff, it generates a part. But we don't want those violin parts. The other thing is that if we go into violin 1 here, we're only showing the original violin 1 line, which is obviously a problem. So we're going to have to do some work in the Manage Parts window. First of all, we don't want these stray violin parts, staffs as their own parts, so just select them and delete those guys, and that's problem solved. The second thing is that with this violin 1 linked part, we need to have those other violin parts part of this part. Lots of parts in that sentence. So what we need to do is choose the new violins here and make sure that they get added to the staves for that part. So just choose the first one, add to part, move it up into place because that was the solo. Make sure that's above. And the second one, add to part, and make sure that's below, which it is. And you're good to go. Now, as soon as you click OK, this is going to create a disaster of a mess in your linked part. So there's going to be a lot of work that you'll need to do here, including I'm just going to break all my multi-measure rests here. And that's a good start. But you'll see we have all 3 staffs except where they are force hidden with the staff style, because I did that in both score and part, right? So we have some interesting situations going on here. But we don't have any brackets. And again, we're showing all of the staves, even though we only want to show them every once in a while. So let's start with the brackets. And on a linked part, again, remember with groups, groups are independent between linked parts and scores. So we can actually create something new or different here, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Groups and brackets add. I'm simply going to add the regular bracket here, not the sub brackets, no group name or anything, and that's it. And click OK, and now you'll get this all grouped together like it should be. Again, same deal with the staffs. Just select to the left of the violin staff here, choose hide empty staffs, and then do the same thing on the alternate one below, hide empty staffs. And what you're left with is a single line most of the time, except where it divides. And you'll get the brackets where you need them. Now, the spacing is always going to be wildly inaccurate whenever you do this. So, invariably there will be a lot of spacing things you'll have to deal with in terms of system spacing for sure. But we can kind of fix that up real quickly here, just so you can kind of see what this will look like. That looks a little bit better. We can add some multi-measure rests here. There we go. How about another one here? There we go. All right, so lots of things that you can do here. And just to kind of clean this up a little bit, you can move your things out of the way. Bar numbers. And so we're kind of good to go. And of course, you can always use the staff tool to space your staffs, get them a little bit closer together. Even the ones where there's the brokenness here, or the cutaway, you can grab that handle and you can always move that up and down. As you can see, it also destroys this position of that clef, so that clef will have to be moved again. And otherwise, it's looking fairly good, right? Except for one issue, if you happen to be showing bar numbers on every measure. There's a couple weird things that will happen. You'll notice in this system particularly, there's no bar number here. There's no bar number here. There's a bar number here and no bar number here. This is because of the way that I have the measure number region set up for the linked parts. You can see that I have bottom staff selected, excluding other staffs. And what this means is that if you're not showing the bottom staff, you're not going to see the measure numbers on the bottom staff, which kind of stinks. So how do we deal with this? Unfortunately, we have to uncheck exclude other staffs. And in some cases, they will go away, and that all depends on the setting in the staff attributes. So what you really need to do here for all 3 of these is make sure that measure numbers are showing. And there we go. For all 3 of these staffs in the linked part, click OK, and now you'll get a lot of duplicate bar numbers. This is really the only way to do it, is to get these duplicate bar numbers and then hide the ones you don't need. So you can kind of just lasso select those and always hide number. And same thing here. Actually, maybe we can show both of them here. I guess that's fine, but you will have to reposition them. Just a lot of funky stuff. This is not exactly an easy process in Finale. Again, here we probably don't want to see these ones on the top, so just lasso select and always hide number, and that should do the trick. And now we'll only see these measure numbers towards the bottom. All right. So there you go. That is string Divisi. It is not easy in Finale, but I'm glad that Jorge recommended this video because it really is a great lesson in using all the parts of the staff tools. You can see that I've done that in this video, which is fantastic. So again, thanks for the suggestion, Jorge, and I hope this has helped. There's so many other things you can do with these staffs. By the way, I could keep going on and on. I mean, there's things that you can do if you wanted to show a Divisi marking here. Maybe that you have just a special group for these measures that shows the group name here. This is Divisi, or you can have a staff label just here, like solo glialtri or something, and all that stuff can be done. The staff labels on a system by system basis can be done as staff styles. I believe I showed you that in one of the staff name videos in the staff tool strategies series. So the sky's the limit if you know how to manage the groups, you know how to manage the staff names as staff styles and all that stuff. So a ton of different options. And when you get into this kind of thing, there is no right answer all the time. It's just kind of what you think makes sense. And so that's the trick to it. So I hopefully this has helped. Hopefully you've learned a whole bunch of stuff. And once again, thanks Jorge for recommending it. By the way, don't forget that you can also submit a subscriber request. Just become a subscriber, send me an email, and I'll do my best to create a video for you. All right, so thanks for watching. My name is Jason. This has been a subscriber request. Don't forget to subscribe yourself, and I will see you soon on the next video. If you enjoyed this video, please visit www.conqueringfinale.com to find full tutorials categorized by topic. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel here, follow me on Twitter here, email me here, or you can send me Morse code, telegraphs, or smoke signals. But please, no carrier pigeons.